Well, good thing we got rates down to 5.8% increase. Okay, so looking at this, so to be honest, this isn't just about rail. This is about the sub-region. And so the development case, the work I've been building this off has been built from is available at the website here, CHRT, Christchurch Heavy Rail Transit.space. And that outlines in more detail the problem that the model is trying to solve. But basically, it's a great thing for the city and sub-region. It'll be good for our economy, our connectivity, our environment, but it will cost money. And just to be transparent, next slide, please. So I'm here as an individual. CRC does not have a position on exempt passenger transport services before the time the exemption has been granted. CRC supports MRT in the spatial plan. And today we're talking about the following amendment. This is the amendment that we passed at our annual plan deliberation. So it approves that the chair, deputy chair, and I meet with the QRL board to investigate the interest and feasibility of a passenger rail business case for Rangiora to Ralston. And so we're not at the point of a decision. It's literally just a meeting. Say, is it feasible or not? And how did we get here? It actually began in 21 through the Regional Transport Committee, where the mayors of Canterbury passed a notice of motion. In 2023, the same committee, the Statutory Transport Committee, recommended to ECAN to fund rail investigations in year 1 of LTP. We decided in our LTP to fund it in year 2. This year, officers recommended to defer the spending out of this council's LTP into year 4, but then this amendment pulled the debate into a different place, which said, okay, we're not going to move the money back into this annual plan, but we're actually going to see if it's feasible in the first place. So that's where we're at. Next slide, please. Here's the main north line just out of Addington. Next slide, please. The thing is, when you spend time on the corridor, I really recommend all of you to go and just spend time down there, like at any part of it. You just really feel this sense that this is like an underutilized space. It just feels like it's not being used, and we're talking vast areas of land here, and also along the corridor, there's vast areas of Crown land and Kiwi Rail estate. So, and especially like look at the line between Riccarton and Kilmarnock. Those kind of areas there, you can just feel that there's the opportunities that are happening. Next slide, please. Why do developers love rail? I've got an answer, Kelly. They love rail because the first section of line here opened to Ralston in 1866. That line has been there. Line between Christchurch and Rangiora, 1872. So these railway lines precede the current government of New Zealand. Like this is back in the provincial era, back when we had the Canterbury Provincial Railways. So interesting times are going through talking about the future for government, but even wherever this all goes, these tracks will still be there. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. One more, please. So just in terms of the major problems that have been identified as to how you're actually going to get a frequent passenger service running this line, and this is from Kiwi Rail engineers. The first problem is the critical infrastructure bottlenecks. There's only one crossing point at Belfast between Addington and Rangiora. That's probably the biggest amount of investments that's needed to get something up and running frequently. So you need to extend central traffic control signal to Rangiora. That's probably a $100 million investment. Next slide, please. Here we see Addington station with the purple around it, and next to it's the Turners, which I think is just is coming on the market soon. So it'd be important to bring that into public ownership. But the problem here is around Addington Station because it's a single platform, and this would create conflicts with the tourist services and also the freight shunting from Waltham and Middleton. So the opportunity here, next slide please, is to actually not have this transit line stop at Addington, and it's to, next slide please, is to actually just put in some platforms to stand it up at Riccarton, Kilmarnock, Pendleton and Papanui. And these lines here, they're our single digit bus routes. They are our PT Futures corridors, they are high frequency. And so this solves the initial problem as well around getting people into the CBD. That is a big problem with this model currently. I also want to thank the City Council for the work they do on our bus infrastructure, because they do an outstanding job. And we talk about buses a little bit, some people more than others, but if we actually take a step back, we have an extremely good bus system, and it's extremely affordable. So next slide, please. And then the final major problem that's going to have to be solved here is around the southwest capacity crunch. So between Ralston and Littleton is the busiest South Island section of rail. There's plenty of scheduled movement today, and the single track past Islington was removed in the 1990s during the privatisation period. So the solutions here is around a phased infrastructure investment. You start with essential works rather than trying to solve everything at once, and also look at initially fewer daily runs. It doesn't necessarily, we don't have to come in with this hyper frequent service initially. You could test the demand initially, and then in terms of the rolling stock, next slide please. This all being worked through. It's all going to come through in conversations that are happening. And look, I'm just here today to talk to you, because we have to talk to each other as public authorities, as governments, as councils, as people, as individuals, as citizens. Because this, that's the only way we solve anything, especially major public projects. And next slide, please. I mean, we are looking at stuff at ECAN, ECAN's looking at stuff. So there's lots of options here to do stuff outside of traditional mechanisms. And then final slide, please. And I just want to say, the fact we're talking about MRT, the fact we're talking about rail, the fact we're talking about buses, I think that this is good for public transport broadly, because we're putting sunlight into it all. And I hope that it encourages people to go try a bus in a place you might not usually try one. And so for me, the whole ecosystem of public transport in the city and sub-region, and hopefully one day the whole region, it's all connected. We're not islands. And so, and so that's basically my presentation today. We want to work with you, and we want to be part of the reform, and I want to be part of the, all being well, so that we can make the city and region better together.
Thank you, Joe. That's good. Very good. Jack, please.
Thanks, Joe. I always appreciate your visibility when it was, in terms of from here. Initially, my question was, do you see this as being complementary or competing with the idea of MRT in the city? Because obviously the commuter rail, I get it from Rangiora and Oxford into the, clearly you do see it as being an alternative to the MRT. The business case said that the heavy rail along those corridors really doesn't stack up. I guess I'm keen to hear from you succinctly as to why this is the best idea when it's already been rolled out.
Yeah, I mean, the business case didn't say it didn't stack up. It just said that the Belfast Hornby corridor was greater value proposition. It was a better investment in the long run. But it definitely didn't say that the Rangiora Ralston line wouldn't add huge land value increases. What it would do to the station centres. There's still a lot of positives in terms of what it would do for the economy. But again, that is just a business case, right? Mm. And also that there was quite a large capital cost on that. And I'm suggesting, and other people are suggesting, and who knows what's happening in the future, that there is a way to do this. Yeah, do it with much smaller capital cost. Thank you.
Jared, please.
Thanks so much. That kind of covered one of mine, which is good. So were you expecting City Council to pay for the infrastructure part? So you talked about some infrastructure costs there, and we usually do the PT infrastructure. Or are you expecting ECAN or Kiwi Rail to do the infrastructure, so stations, double tracking, those kind of things?
Yeah, it'll depend on the reform that we're going through and the entities that are, that we look to use to kind of put a system like this into place. Because if we did it for our current PTOL model, then yeah, it would be, city council would, I guess, be come to the party in terms of infrastructure.
Okay. And have you looked at the Auckland example where people were expected to switch modes? I can't remember which track it was, but initially they had a system set up where people were expected to catch the train and then switch onto either another train or onto buses to get into that last bit to town. And it didn't work, and they didn't get the patronage until they were able to finish that line into town and actually have people arriving in town.
Correct.
Have you had a look at that and what that does to like a potential model for actual getting passengers on board?
I haven't seen that, but feel free to send it through to me.
Right.
But I will say, like, MRT is based on the premise of buses rolling from Belfast out to Rangiora and Hornby to Ralston.
To start with, yeah. And given that the MRT process was really thorough and it's been signed off by all 4 councils with only 2 votes against between the 4 councils, that it's been signed off by the Waka Kotahi board and is now in the top half of the projects for the National Infrastructure Strategy. Do you think the government's likely to support both or just one or the other? And
I don't want to trash MRT, but where'd the $78 million of PT Futures go that was a precursor to MRT?
you might like to ask, since you've raised that publicly, you might like to ask your staff who chaired the meeting when that funding was lost, well, when that particular group said that they didn't need it anymore. I mentioned that to you earlier, so I don't know if you've checked with your staff or not.
So
I mean, I've got the minutes from that meeting. I can circulate them to the members if they'd like to see them.
Yeah. So CCC wasn't represented there.
Well, I'll circulate the minutes.
Need 3 quick things. Have you looked at Darfield? So just as a thought, because there's so much filling going all out that way, I think that if we're going to look at, and I think it's a great presentation, Joe. I do think it's something we've got to look at in the future. So if we could look at that as well. I think one of the key things, it's kind of following on what Sarah was kind of alluding to in Auckland, maybe we look at, I mean, the Eddington station is a joke. It should never have been there. It's just a secondary kind of half-assed thing. If we look at Morehouse Ave, there is land there. I think if we tied that in and looked at that tying in with the buses, I think that would be a real game changer to any of the planning, because if we drop people off in Eddington, what are they going to do? And so I think that's really important. The last one, I think it's for both councils to look at, and other councils, is if the government's going to bring in rates capping, what's the limit to our funding from then? Because we will be looking, and you guys will be looking at what is our core, and that's really what's driving this, the talk about or around rates capping. So that's going to be a whole different thing. Thank you. Thanks. It's great, Joe.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Pauline, please.
Oh, actually, that's sort of what I was going to ask, that how are you intending to get people into the central city? Because you're finishing at Addington there. So I agree that has to be some more infrastructure investment to bring them into the city to make it work, in my view. But I'd just like to thank you for your complimentary comments about the City Council's end of the partnership and the public transport, not end, our contribution. And I'd like to recognise Environment Canterbury as well for the way you stepped up and electrified buses and made them really comfortable, and we're doing our best to get the shelters and infrastructure in to make it an even better experience. So thanks for those comments. It's great to be working together, and thanks for coming and putting these ideas to us as well. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Joe. Good presentation. Thank you. Right, we have no deputations or petitions today, so we'll move on to confirmation of minutes. I'm